How do you find the will to fight back against a world that wants to keep you sedated, average, and stuck in plates? Join us for the tools and strategies you need to create a life of abundance, discipline, and high achievement. This is the Tactical Empire with Jeff Smith.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Tactical Empire. I am super excited about our guest today, Mr. Marcus Aurelius Anderson. He is a best-selling author with a book called The Gift of Adversity, a TEDx speaker, mindset coach, and a top-ranked podcast host. His podcast is called ACTA NON-VERBA. And I'm super excited to catch up with this guy. I haven't seen him in about a year, but we actually have spent some time together in Mexico and really hit it off, where this guy was the keynote speaker at the little event that we were at. And I got to know him, and we just became great friends and connected over time through different networking groups as well that we were both in. And so I'm definitely looking forward to catching up with you, Marcus. Thanks for coming on today.
And thank you so much for having me. And I love that time that we had in Mexico. It's like when you and I connect, that's great. When our wives connect and are on the same level, it's like, yeah, that's amazing. Kirsten has really inspired Rachel, my wife, to do 75 hard, to really push herself. And so, yeah, I love these kind of friendships and these relationships, and iron sharpens iron. This is how we get better, right?
For sure. I can't tell you how happy I am that the women we're with have the willingness to do the personal development and growth side of things, because that was not always the case in our relationship.
It's the same for me. My wife, until she came to my first live event, she was like, "Why do people give you money? Why do they give you money?" And then she was at the event and she actually did some of the work. She was like, "Oh," and then now she's able to apply some of that. She's been an entrepreneur for 18 years. But even then, being able to kind of take little baby steps into that, scaling her business more, hiring the people, not being afraid to invest in the short term initially so that we can have that long term. And last year was a great example of what happens when you actually put it all together and allow the systems to do the work instead of trying to be the bottleneck on everything. So yeah, man, if we're not living it, why are we trying to teach other people, right?
That's a really interesting point, because both you and I are coaches and consultants, and we've been doing it for years. And it's always perplexing to me when you meet someone like that that's done decades of business building, and they're like, "Why would you ever spend money on a coach? I don't get it." And I'm like, I still hear it to this day. People bristle about it. They push back on it. And I think that for me, I was completely the opposite. I've spent money on continuing education and anything and everything since anything I wanted to do, I hired coaches and got more information as fast as I possibly could, because I think the purpose of groups and coaches and mentors are to provide you speed, leverage, and connections. And I'm impatient by nature. And so I want speed and leverage and connections. And so I think the people that haven't dove into that realm, it's always interesting talking to them about why.
It is. And it kind of shows, like you say, where they're at in the journey. You're the same way I am. Speed is our security, right? So if I can get done in 6 months by paying a coach what would take me 3 years of figuring out on my own, that means I'm saving 2.5 years of opportunities, of connections, of leverage. And even if I spend a little bit of money right now, I'm going to get way more money in the long run. And frankly, I don't know, I think I'm speaking for you as well. Again, when I did my audiobook, like I tried to do it here 2 or 3 times and it was just a fucking nightmare. And I was like, all right, going to the studio, putting down some money, getting it done, 1 week of it, and I can step away now. The team takes care of it. And now it's going to be done, as opposed to me wanting to do it, as opposed to me thinking about doing it or thinking that this is something I have to get done. It's the same thing when you have that coach that's on your ass every week. That's like, hey, you claim this is what's important, but this is what you're doing. So Why are you lying to me? Why are you lying to yourself? And that keeps you very honest. So again, if you put down some money to get you to get the stuff done that you need to get done, man, that's what we have to have. So there's nothing like accountability to kick you in the ass. And there's nothing like putting money where your mouth is to give you true accountability.
Yeah. I'm a huge believer of that if you're paying for it, you're focused on it. I mean, you and I have been in the game long enough to know that like you try to give shit away to people or do a favor to somebody and their buy-in is just shit. Right.
That's exactly it.
When there's dollars on the line and you've exchanged a sum of money, preferably that gives you a little bit of a lump in your throat that you've got to perform.
Yep.
So that's where some coaches go wrong, is that they price themselves too low, and then it's not, they commoditize themselves, but they also don't get the results that they need because somebody can throw 200 or $300 a month or whatever the insignificant number to that person is. They're priced low enough that it becomes a commodity, and then you don't get follow through and you don't get that accountability.
That's the truth. And here's the other part people don't see. If I do that as a coach, I burn myself out, but I also end up becoming a worse coach every time. If I talk to somebody that I shoot them a number and they go, but they want it bad enough and they commit, that person is willing to do the work. So what does it make me do? It forces me as a coach to elevate.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I'm charging this person an amount that's going to make me go, I better fucking deliver. And if that's the case, that makes them deliver and they feel it. But like you said, if it's $100 a month and I'm giving them everything, I'm giving them the keys to the fucking castle and they're not executing, and they're, oh, but what about this? And they're giving me an excuse. And this other person said this. And well, what about this? I don't care about that. You want to do this stuff with us right now. If you want to do this work, this is what we have to do. And if you are pricing yourself too low in the idiot zone, you're going to face idiot problems over and over again. And frankly, they're not going to solve themselves. You have to put yourself in a place where you respect yourself, your services, and frankly, your client enough to kick them in the ass, to call them on their bullshit. Also have a little bit of love and compassion sometimes. But in the end, that's what our job is. My job is not to be your friend, it's to be your coach. My job is to find out what you really want and then to dig into what that really is and then get you there, especially on the days when you don't want to do it. And guess what? Emotions assassinate the truth, right? You don't give a fuck about how you feel once you get to that place. You look back on that success and you're like, that wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was. But if it wasn't for somebody kicking you in the ass to get there on the days that you didn't feel like doing it, you're not going to get there.
Yeah, I think that results are what matter, not really how you get there. Like if you come to me and you tell me that you want to hit $1 million in your business this year and you're at 500,000, there's going to be some tough conversations because you've got to double your efforts, and it's not an easy conversation to have a lot of times. But you're exactly right. I mean, that's one of I enjoy seeing them reap the rewards of the growth that they wanted to do and the action that they take. And so it's super fulfilling when that happens and it kind of comes together. You made me think of that meme that floats around that says the $500 client is it's got a $500,000 or $500 client, a $50,000 client. It says $500 client is like, hey, will you restructure your entire program to fit me specifically because I'm different than everyone else? And the $50,000 client is like, wire sent. When can we schedule the call?
That's it. Invoice sent. What can I do? Is like, that's exactly it. And that's what it's all about. And if you're going to be serious about anything, if you, again, we talk about coaching, any athlete, any team, any successful campaign, there was a coach, there was a person that was there, whether it be a physical conditioning coach, whether it be a person that's actually helping on specific areas, technical stuff. Everybody that you've ever thought of that you can think of now, Tim Grover, right? His big thing is, coaching Jordan, coaching some of the best in the world. They all had a coach. They all need that thing. And sometimes a coach is not, I've had a lot of people that's like, man, what you're telling me is not like the most exotic thing in the world or rocket science. It's like, it has to be simple. Again, complexity is the enemy of execution. When you're in combat, you don't have a lot of luxuries. If you take contact and you just fall apart, you're probably not going to make it. But if you can do the drills enough and you start to respond appropriately, it just kind of happens on its own. Because why? We're not allowing emotion to go in there and dictate what we're doing next. We say, do I want to do this? Or do I want to allow myself to compromise in this area? And the problem is, if we compromise at the first sign of adversity, we will begin to compromise when we should be fighting the hardest. And then that bleeds into every circle of our life, from our relationships to our health, our nutrition, anything that we're trying to get better at. And without that sort of no bullshit look at what's going on, asking yourselves, is what I'm doing now or about to do, is this going to get me closer or further away from these things that I think are priorities? And if I prioritize everything, then nothing's a priority. So now there's all this vagueness. Now there's all this, stuff in the ether that we have no clue what we should be doing next. And when people are like, I want to level up, what does that look like to you? Where do you want to level up? Well, I want more money. Okay, what does more money look like to you? And like you said, the $500,000 to $1 million question. If you tell them that you're going to work harder, that may seem overwhelming. But if you said, what if we just work more efficiently? What if we can 80-20 some of this stuff? What if you hire that employee or that team for $250,000 this year, but in 3 years, they get you that money back and then some, and now you have all this time, you're not the bottleneck. Now, all of a sudden, that's much more doable, as opposed to just asking that person to push harder. Because some of them, like you said, if they're burnt out, they're either doing it for the wrong reasons, or they're not actually looking at what's really going on and what they really want. And that's when those hard questions, like you said, that 5 to 10 year entrepreneur starts realizing, okay, this is not sustainable for me. So what do I do? Do I just give it up? Once you become an entrepreneur, it's hard to give it up and go back to a cubicle. Mm-hmm. So we have to evolve, we have to change, we have to adapt, right?
Yeah. Sometimes it's just perspective, though. And it's that second set of eyes.
Yeah.
Because one thing I'm passionate about is giving people more time in their schedule and making more money. And yes. It's a lot easier than you think it is, because most of the time, the way they've been doing it is the only way they know how to do it. And so you bring in solutions, because I'm big on focusing on your other areas of life to make business go, because I believe business is one of the easiest things that we do. We just make it complex. And as males, it's a natural controlling environment for us. Like I was talking to you about my wife writing a book about that, and she speaks to that. And she talks about how I spend time working, because it's a known environment. It's a known element. It's the same thing like in special operations. Like when we leave special operations and get kicked out in the civilian world, we don't know how to operate. We want to go back to yes. chaos and where we feel comfortable. And so like in business, we feel comfortable because we have controllables. So like I'm big on going out and fixing the other areas of your life, taking care of your wife, being a father, getting a hobby, spending some time thinking, quiet, reflection, whatever it is. But like a lot of times guys are just like, let's go harder. And then they're completely fried from doing the same thing over and over again, rather than doing something new. And so you can peel back their schedule with a little time management, things like that, then improve their life at home. And foundationally, once that foundation's set up, boom, money goes and business goes, because it just becomes like everything starts working in sync.
Yeah, it's synergistic. And it's yes. the whole thing too, where a lot of people, especially with social media now, there's all kinds of information out there. And there's a lot of great information out there. But what happens is a lot of people are consuming the wrong stuff, or they do this. They confuse familiarity with knowledge or experience. So everybody that's listening to this podcast right now has probably heard of the 80-20 principle, right? This idea that 20% of our actions create 80% of our output. But just because you're familiar with it does not mean that you're applying it. Doesn't mean that you're being surgical with it. Doesn't mean that you're doing it in your family life or your business or your health or consistently. You're not attacking it with urgency. You're just like, yeah, I've heard that before. That's a great idea. Okay, but if you would actually attack your schedule, like you say, 80-20 this, which of these things that I have going today, what's going to create the most of my results consistently? Those are the things I need to be doing. That should be your power list, not just a bunch of arbitrary stuff. Because if you have if you have more than 4 or 5 things on your list that are truly priorities, you will falter, you will hesitate, you will slow down because you're either overwhelmed or you don't know which one you want to do, or you'll see the hard one and you say, that's what I need to get done. But man, I don't want to do it. So I'm going to go down to this little one. Oh, I'm going to respond to this email. Oh, I'm going to check on social media. Oh, I'm going to do this thing. And now you've got this glorified distraction, right? And you're laughing because we've all done it.
Yep.
But the thing is, if you have somebody that keeps you on task and is like, listen, is this the priority? Fucking act like it. If it's really the priority, you're going to continue to do what needs to be done. We don't build a wall. We just lay a brick perfectly every single day. And the process we have to be a part of. We have to be present to that, because the end result, again, like 2 years ago, we couldn't control that.
Yep.
But the process of us being in the right place, the process of us being able to adapt, to pivot, to lean into that chaos, because that's where the opportunity is. All these companies, you and I understand this. 2 years ago, the companies I was working with, I was like, you need to be aggressive right now because everybody else is holding back, just like playing poker. All the big companies are already established. They can hold back. And we know now that there was financial incentives for them to do that.
Exactly.
The ones at the bottom of the list, they were barely making it. So they're gone. So the people in the middle, there's a lot of unclaimed territory if you're willing to go out there and do it, but nobody's going to give it to you. And if they say that they are, they're probably trying to sell something to you.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt about that. I am guilty of over consuming information. And so one of the big things that I'm focused on and have been focused on with my clients more than anything is just getting real narrow and focused and finishing things. Even if you're only working on one thing, take it completely to completion, then move on to the next thing. Because when I am stuck and unproductive, it's because I have taken on too much, or I've stood up too many things that I'm running, like spinning the plates, and I've got 50 plates spinning. But all of them are at like 80% completion. So none of them are fucking doing anything productive because none of them are actually done. So like you can't flip the switch and turn any of them on because they're all just in process.
Yep.
And so if you think about peeling that back to where you look at all the shit you're doing and just do a quick exercise of the 5 most important things that you could get done over the next 30 days, and then just take it and plop it on your desk at the number one thing, and that's going to move the needle, and then just take it until it's done. Work on it every day until it's done.
That's it.
Because like, that's where we fall short. Cause you're right. It's because of inputs though. Like for most people, cause what you're talking about, like we're just barraged with shit. It's like, oh, buy this next program. You can learn this, learn all the basics, done for you. White label businesses. Here you go. And, it's overwhelming. And so, but what I learned the longer I'm around and running different businesses and gaining experience is that it's still all about like the fundamentals. Nothing's really changed. It's a lot sexier. It's a lot faster. There's a lot more technology involved, but fundamentally, if you don't have the basic skill sets necessary, you can't scale, replicate, start new businesses, do new ventures. It's really just simple. It's the simple shit over and over and over again.
Yeah. Bruce Lee's protege, Guru Dhanananda said there's no advanced techniques. There are just simple techniques that you do well in the face of adversity. So like throwing the jab and the cross and the hook, those are great. Can you do it under pressure? Can you do it when the guy's throwing it back at you? Can you get rocked and then throw it? Because if everything goes to part the first time you take that first punch in the face, you're really not that stable. And then, like you said, I recommend to people, I know that we both have podcasts and we both have a lot of things going, but I would recommend to people right now, fast from shit for a while. Like just don't read any more books, don't consume any more content, and be really honest and get a piece of paper and say, no bullshit. What do I need to do? Like if I put a gun to your head, you probably know at least a couple of things to work on. And like you said, even if it's not 5, if it's those first 2, The answer for everyone, for most people, especially as entrepreneurs, the answer that they are seeking is found in the adversity that they're avoiding.
Yep.
So if your sales pipe sucks, guess what? You have to get that pipeline going. Are you willing to do it yourself? No. Then are you willing to bite the bullet and find somebody to do that for you? Well, no. Well, now you're in an impasse and this will never change. You have to decide what's important. If your pipeline's great, but your business model sucks, or you can't perform it, or your operations can't get there, or your fulfillment's not there, then you're never going to get to the right place. You can have people sell all day. All it's going to do is create resentment on the other side of the equation. They're not going to perform. And again, what happens? The client misses out, the customer misses out, and your business may not survive. So we have to have that kind of intensity when we're doing all that stuff. And even what you were saying too about the simplicity, I do something very easy with people. It's a 3 up, 3 down analogy. And I say, is it your business? Is it your physiology? Is it your psychology? Is it your relationships? What are the 3 things that you do in your business or in this area better than anyone else? So if it's a business, it may be a product, it may be an inside track on a service, it may be an kind of exposed area that a lot of people don't know about yet. That is your advantage. That's on one side. There's a hose that connects us to the other side, which is the 3 things that we're not doing very well, that we're dropping the ball on. That hose is your cash flow. The 3 things that you're doing badly are the feet that are stepping on that hose that stop you from getting to that place. So like you were saying, everybody thinks they have to do more things. Actually, if they would just take 1 foot off of that hose for the sales cycle, for example, that would save them a lot of time. And what else? Vicariously, the side that they do really, really well, they get even better at it because now they have more opportunities to provide it. So people are like, oh, you guys are being vague. No, this is nitty gritty. This is 80-20 at its highest level. This is something you can apply right fucking now. And if you listen to nothing else that we say here and you get only that, you can apply it to everything else. You can apply it to, again, if you're doing 75 hard, if you're doing something physical, something that keeps you accountable. Again, that's the thing that keeps you moving forward. And now you start taking those blockers off of your cash flow, off of your energy flow, off of your emotional flow with your family, with yourself. And that's the thing that keeps you from feeling burned out. Like you said, if we do these other things, that business will give it. What do we see? You have the CEO, he's crushing it in business, but he feels badly that he's not with his family. So he's not as present in business as he should be. And now he's working 14, 16 hours. When he's with his family, he's not present because he's worried about his business. He's on the couch with the kids and the dogs, should be watching TV, just chilling out. And he's like, check Slack. Oh, this email. What did this person say? I wonder what happened there. Did they close this? Man, you're killing yourself because you are never successful. You're never feeling fulfilled and you're never present. And by doing that, you're constantly distracted, whether it be emotionally or professionally. And in the end, it's not sustainable. In the end, we're doing this for our families, for our lives, for ourselves, for our freedom. And if you forget about that, then you will start building resentment towards your family because you're working your ass off. You may not feel like you're getting what validation or attention that you want. So there's all these things we have to really be honest about. And if we don't do that, we're just going to kind of continue making those same mistakes over and over again. And that mistake, again, like I said, with familiarity, if you're used to doing something a certain way, even if it's wrong, a lot of people will lean into that because they would rather have familiarity than chaos.
Well, it's a heightened sense of awareness too, which is why you've got to disconnect from the inputs from time to time, because you can't, like, use the analogy of getting hit in the face. You can't make any good decisions when you're getting just smoked in the face. And so, yeah, I mean, taking a technology break or a walk without any podcast playing in your ear, stuff like that is game changers. Another tip I was given one time that I found a lot of value in, because I am admittedly an overconsumer of information, like I'm saying, like I try to read and study, and like I mow through audiobooks, and like I've read a tremendous amount of books, but the tip that was given to me is stop listening to anything for a minute, book wise, and sit down and write your beliefs in things. Like leadership was one that I was studying a ton on, because I had to speak on a leadership panel and present for Mastermind last month. So I was consuming all kinds of leadership stuff. And then the advice came through just to sit down and write what I believe leadership to be. And then what in my words, not Marcus Aurelius's words, or not like, what is courage to you? Like, what are these other values that you value in your life, but like from your mouth, what are to pen to paper, what do those things mean to you, and how are they meaningful to you? And it allowed me to gather a lot of clarity around how I lead my staff and stuff like that, because you can't just overconsume this information and then regurgitate it. You really have to process it and bring it into what your belief system is so that you can live it. And you can't be a leader if you can't lead people and by example, right? And if you're just spewing information or regurgitating something you read, like, your actions are not going to be in alignment with that definition of anything, right? So
absolutely. That's so much of it. And like you said, when you have to teach it, in the martial arts, they say one teach, but two learn. So every time I teach somebody a technique, if they're doing it wrong, I'm learning that I'm showing them the technique incorrectly, right? So that's where the reinforcement comes in. And like you said, reading all this stuff about leadership, about whatever it is, we eventually have to get to the place where we start to digest it and bring it back. One of my clients last year, at the beginning of January, I really, just like you, we attacked the entire year, the quarter. You had the vision of everything that you want. And he was a big Hal Elrod guy. Like, he loved the Miracle Morning stuff, and he loved the idea of the protocol. But there were like 2 or 3 steps that to him just weren't giving him ROI, even though he would kind of do it religiously. And I was like, let's pull those out. And it was like, and I was like, as a matter of fact, there's these other 2 things that you've been implementing since we've been working together that are actually serving you. And as a matter of fact, we could plug those into this place. And, it was almost like this sacred idea at first, where it's like, well, I can't do that. That's a sacred cow, or this is this religion to me. And that's because that's what got this entrepreneur to where they were. Yeah. It's like, that's fine, but let's evolve. If you want to ascend, you have to change what you're doing. Right. So, I mean, the armor that we carry onto the battlefield, the Kuyo idea, right? I have to take the armor off sometimes if I want to go fast, right? That's where my speed and security is. I would need to take the armor off when I'm at home sometimes. So I need to understand it's okay to, Bruce Lee says, I absorb what is useful, I discard what is useless, and I add what is specifically my own. If you are a leader or an author or an entrepreneur at all, that should be punching you right in the face now, because that guy was living it in the 70s when nobody was a movie star or a superstar as an Asian in the United States. Like, this guy was literally putting it into play. Yep. So seeing how he did that, it should give us an idea that, listen, you find out what works best for you. Again, with martial arts, with anything, I'm not the tallest guy in the world. I don't have long arms. So I need to get inside. I need to get a hold of you. I need to pull a weapon on you. I need to, ambush you. I need to get there so I can win. Mm-hmm. That's what people have to understand. You don't have to be David Goggins. You don't have to be Jocko. You don't have to be any of these people. But if there's something from them that you can take, that you can apply, if only inspiration, if only that little mantra that's like, suck it up, embrace the suck, discipline is freedom, whatever it is, put that into your hard drive. And then if that helps you in that moment, that's fine. But you and I also understand that words can only do so much. That's why the whole idea of ACTA NON-VERBA, done is better than spoken, right? Perfection is nothing if I cannot send it. I was talking to you earlier before the recording, working on my second book, and there's a couple of people that have expressed interest. And I'm like, and it took me a year and a half to write my first book. So now, giving myself a 6-month deadline and really trying to attack it now, I need that urgency. Without a deadline, time means nothing. That's Parkinson's law. But the idea is, for me, I'm not different. Like you said, you send it. If they like it, they like it. And it has to be polished anyway. It's not going to be perfect. Hemingway, right? The first draft of anything is shit. That's okay. That's the initial idea. That's what you get down on paper. And now you go for that walk without the input. And now you think about it. And all of a sudden you get this space, and now you come back, you're like, holy shit. And now you have this breakthrough. Even Zen monks, right? They would always talk about how they're in meditation. They're just shutting their mind off and they just let stuff go. But they've been practicing sutra or scriptures, and they've been going over this stuff all day. They've been learning this stuff. And then that meditation, that separation, that detachment gives them the capacity to start connecting the dots. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, I'm enlightened. It's like, no, you're not enlightened. You shut up for a little bit and you listen to what was really important. and you hacked away all the stuff that is not serving you. This is what everything comes back to. It comes back to Occam's razor. The simplest answer is usually correct. One, because there's less steps to fuck up in the process. And two, it's the most efficient way to get to where we have to go. And if we take our ego out of the way and stop trying to sound complex or exotic with what we're doing, we'll get a lot more done. And the results, like you said, they speak for themselves.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you talk about the miracle morning. I've got my opinions on that. That shit drives me crazy. And it's only my personal beliefs and my personal experience, because nothing has changed my life and my money and my production more than doing the biggest productive thing I can do immediately when I wake up.
Absolutely.
And if I get my critical tasks done first thing in the morning, like the rest of the day just flows. And like that has changed my entire life. And so while I like it, because I'm a goofball and I like all that shit. I mean, I will read about and practice any sort of mindset work, meditation, all of that stuff. For me, that thing, the people that it pains me that do it are the people that are trying to get out of their W-2 jobs, and they spend their hour and a half before work doing the fucking miracle morning. And I'm like, that's absolutely a fucking waste of time. Like, spend 90 minutes working on some business that you want to bridge the gap to and transition to. And if you do that for a year, you will be on your way to not working that W-2 job. But I mean, we all have a finite amount of time in the day. And so that goes back to time management. I just think a lot of that stuff, and I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I already have. So fuck it.
We're here. Let's lean in, man.
Let's lean in. No, if you're going to do all that stuff, I say, like, manage your time a little more effectively. Do that stuff after work. Do it at different times. But again, some people have peak productivity at different times too. Yeah. Like, I'm just a morning person. Like, I've been up since 3 this morning because I just wake up and I do shit. And sometimes I'm more excited about it than other times. And like today, I was very excited about life. And but I got a bunch done, and a lot done before even 5:30 when Kirsten got up. And so some people are night people. I can't imagine that, but you just kind of got to find your sweet spot, but you can't waste time either. Like, if your morning routine is interfering with where you want to go, you need to have the awareness to audit that.
That's exactly it. Tom Bilyeu from Impact Theory and Quest Nutrition, I got lucky enough to go out to his house and see him get interviewed by a buddy of mine on a podcast. And he was saying that every hour he self audits. So like, when he was done with that interview, in his mind, was that the best use of his time, or what was the ROI on that? And again, he has, this huge mansion in the hills. His whole team, like, they all had almost their own little separate rooms. And it was just like a good fire squad. Like, they would come up, they had like one specific question. He'd look, this, no, yes, go. And it was just, never raised his voice, never had to jump up and down, never had to do fucking cartwheels. Like, they had a Monday morning where they knew where everything was. This is where they get everything done. This is the meeting. This is what's important. KPIs this week. They would do an AAR on Fridays after actual report, essentially. Where are we at? What's the KPI here? They use that OKR protocol. So they know very much where they should be at what point in any time that they're doing this objective. But this is a guy that's worth, sold his part of it for over, $500 million. Yeah. I think he's on a pretty good trajectory to know what needs to be done. And again, Marshall Goldsmith, he's like one of the most famous, coaching executive guys. Like, he was the top executive coach. He was paid like $250,000 per client with a money back guarantee, never had to give anybody their money back. His big thing was like asking yourself a bunch of these questions. Like, did I do my best to do this and this and this? Lots of times, if you're being really honest, the answer is no. Like, did I do my best to do this? No. But if we don't have that, like you said, this power list, this critical task that says, listen, did I do this to the best of my ability? Well, I got it done. That is the best of my ability. Check it off. Next. Don't waste any more emotional energy in that. Don't spend any more, like you said, we have so much time. a limited amount of time, but more importantly, we have a limited amount of actual like cognitive good decision-making time, like you said. So if you talk to that person that's a night person, okay, maybe they're more creative at night, but they may be making their better decisions earlier or vice versa. So it's about, like you said, that self-knowledge and just being honest with ourselves. How are you going to respond to this adversity before it gets here? The adversity of losing a client, losing your major clients, or losing an employee, or needing to gain another employee. Have hindsight now. Ask yourself that question now. What are you going to do with that place? Again, because if we wait until we're taking contact, the decisions that we make under fatigue are usually compromised at best, and it's just based on survival. And in this world, if you want something, you have to go out and fucking take it. You can't just hope to survive because you're a nice person, because you will be eaten alive. And the people that think you're a nice person are not the people that you need to impress to get to where you need to go.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of people have just built in limiting mindsets. And so, I mean, that's one of the things I try to speak on as much as I possibly can, is that like, you're not boxed into this like story that society's been telling you. Like, if you don't like where you live, move. If you don't like where you work, change it. If you don't like that you're fat, like, fix it. Like, you have the ability to control everything. And one thing that's been most eye-opening to me over the past probably 10 years is, like, I always thought I could be successful, or I had these big visions and big dreams of what I wanted to do. But like, it's really extraordinary once you actually start doing some things and running around with some people that, like, there's really no ceiling on what we're capable of doing. None at all, like, at all. And I mean, if you want to make $1 billion, you can do it. You're going to have a high level of awareness, and you're going to have to be a great time manager, and you're going to have to do what you're saying, Marcus, and evaluate the ROI on how you're spending your time. And there's just really no limitations on us as human beings, especially, well, I mean, they're trying to impose some limitations, but the longer we keep the current economic system and maybe rein it back and make it a little more advantageous to business owners, that there's really nothing you can't have or accomplish if you're willing to pay the price for it.
That's it. And like you said, if we don't pay the price for it, then we're not committed, right? There's one level of commitment, and that's total. So again, we're talking about price, we're talking about coaching, we're talking about these different things. This shows the level of commitment that I'm willing to have. Am I willing to put a price point on this? Am I willing to pay that price because I know what I want to get? And again, in my experience, the coaches that I've had in the past, even, I've gotten 10x back from whatever I put into those people. Even if it's not the best relationship, if nothing else I learn, that's a flag. I'm going to look for that. I'm not going to run into that next time, whether it be understanding relationships, business, all those different things. And again, the only way to have that is by at least going out and attempting to fall down. Everybody wants to be at the top of the mountain without getting dirty or taking any steps to get there. But if it were easy, you wouldn't fucking respect it.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you don't earn it, you're not going to feel like it was actually worth anything when you're there.
Well, your words have to align with your actions as well, right? People say they want X, Y, and Z, but when your actions don't align with that, it's obvious that you actually didn't want that, to the point that you were willing to pay the price.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. So, or change your behaviors, or be committed over a long period of time. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes people make, is they just quit too early, and they can't stay focused for a long time. And I mean, I'm guilty of that as anybody else. I mean, like, I'm a shiny squirrel guy. I shift directions all the time. And the older I get, the more I realize, like, fuck, man, if I would have just stayed on that one thing, if I would have just got into real estate when I was 25 and just stayed on real estate and never deviated. I mean, it is what it is. You live and learn, but like, those lessons, when you think about, like, if I could teach my 20-year-old self something, what would I teach myself?
Yeah.
And it's really to figure out, like, you've got to ask hard questions and better questions of yourself, because a lot of people don't ever even take the time to do that because of all the inputs. they don't have to. They're able to avoid them all because there's so much shit going on all the time. They're like, ah.
And it makes them feel busy. It makes them feel like they're really doing it. Oh, I'm crushing it. Oh, I'm pushing this. And you're like, okay, I'll ask you 2 questions. What are you still doing right now that you shouldn't be doing? What are you not doing that you should be? And they sound similar, but they are different. And like you said, those are the kind of questions. Ask yourself this. It's 2 years from now. It's 2024. Your business has failed. Why did it fail? It's those kind of questions that are like surgical, that cut through all the fat, all the bullshit, and get to the real heart of it. And now you have to ask yourself, well, this shows me that I need to dam up this area. It shows me that my sales are not where they need to be, or it shows me that I don't have enough of whatever it is. This keeps you very honest. So by getting in front of it now, everybody wants to scale their business, right? They don't understand that they're also scaling the cancer in their business. They're scaling the bad stuff in their business. It's like, trim the fat first before you try to explode this thing up that may actually grow big enough to put you out of business.
Yeah. Yeah. That was one of the exercises I assigned yesterday for our inner circle mastermind. It was like, what's the number one positive thing that you feed yourself with in life? So like, what brings you energy, what revitalizes you, and what has you operating at an optimal level? And then, are you doing it? Have you been doing it? Because like, I don't know about you. I mean, you said you were sick. Like, I have had just a shit start of the year. Like, I have been like sick or not motivated or something almost the whole year. And then I had this like cough thing drag on forever. And so it's just been a weird 5 weeks so far. And I've had to just trudge through it and continue to just try to get shit done with a lack of motivation. But so we were reflecting on the positives, like what feeds you. Like, exercise is my thing. If I do it, I can stay straight. And then that brings us back to the whole torn labrum in my hip thing and shit like that. And so how does that shit run downhill to affect every other aspect of our lives? And then the converse of that was the number one negative thing that you're allowing in your life, right? Yep. So are you sedating with social media? Is alcohol a little more prevalent than it should be in your life? Like, are you not sleeping the appropriate amount that you know you need to get, and there's no real reason for it? You're just fucking around and not going to bed. Like, I mean, a lot of people get caught up in that, right? Like, they know they need 7 hours of sleep or whatever, and then they stay up to watch one more thing on Netflix, and they drag ass in the morning, or they lose their 90 minutes of critical task time in the morning. Like, and you really just have to be I think it's a theme of what you've been talking about the whole time, but like, it's just really important to have the awareness and to be willing to be honest with yourself where you're at. Because I mean, who the fuck cares? Like, ultimately, this game is all about you. It's me versus me, and that's it. Nobody else really gives a shit about you at all. Like, I mean, your family does to an extent, but like, every day is just a war of you versus you. And so it's perfectly okay to admit your shortcomings, recognize them, own up to them, and then move on from them and say, you know what, that's not fucking serving me anymore. And I could be at this level if I just wouldn't do X, Y, or Z, or let's try something new.
That's it. We have to do it with that curiosity, with that openness, put our ego aside. And just like you said, people, whether they admit it or not, they're all self-absorbed. That's just the human nature, right? That's like the way we're designed as humans. Winston Churchill says, when I was 20 years old, I worried about what everybody thought. When I was 40 years old, I didn't care what everybody thought. When I was 60 years old, I realized that nobody was thinking of me at all. It's like, in the end, this is your life. This is your movie that you're creating. Are you going to be the hero? Or are you going to be that guy that just like kind of was on the sidelines? Are you going to be that person who's actually demanding the most from yourself? Listen, you were talking about motivation and pushing through, having discipline, even when we don't feel like doing it. Everybody that anybody that's listening to me looks up to, any big person, athlete, CEO, military person, whoever it is, those people have trouble. Those people have days when they don't feel like doing it. They have a hard time getting through it. They face adversity all the time. And they say, I'm going to keep going. So that's what it comes down to. It's not easy for them. So don't put them on a pedestal and think, oh, well, that's because it's Jeff Smith or it's David Goggins or it's Jocko Willink. It's like, no, these people still have a hard time. They still have to push through. What are you going to do when you have to push through? Did you do it today? Great. Are you doing it tomorrow? Are you trying to click it up a little bit tomorrow? Do you have a micro adversity, something that makes you go up 5% in this area of your life? If it's not, then you're going to just continually stay in the same place. And we know how inflation is, right? Like it's going to continue to escalate. So unless you get in front of this thing, you're always going to be running to stand still. You're going to be drowning, even if you feel like you're being productive in the process.
Yeah. I think people just take for granted the compounding effect, both positive and negative.
Oh yeah.
Like, because once you start compromising your decisions, then that next thing becomes easier. And like you're saying, everybody's just human. Like they all are human. They all struggle with their own shit. They've all got their own problems. They've all got their own weaknesses. Anybody and everybody that you can think of. Just over time, they've chosen the more difficult thing to do at the time, and that began to compound. So what you look at and think may be a very difficult decision for them to make or a difficult thing for them to do, they have made thousands of micro decisions in that direction over time that have built to the point where that looks easy. It's like shooting a free throw, right? You shoot a million free throws and when you hit it, it's like you couldn't have ever missed it. But if I shoot one fucking free throw a month and then everything's on the line, I'm probably going to look like a real shitty free throw shooter.
Yeah. And there's so much of that, like you said, that becomes the habit, that becomes our standard, whether we're aware of it or not. And, you know, the standard that if we have a standard that you were talking about leadership before, if I have a standard that says, listen, today I'm going to make courageous decisions for whatever reason. When people think about discipline or hardship or adversity, some people that triggers them. And I've noticed that those people that are triggered by that usually don't have discipline or usually don't like to face adversity, which is fine. But if you can say to yourself, what's the courageous decision right now? What's the courageous decision to have in this conversation with my wife or with my family or with my coworker or with my business partner, right? What would that look like? What would the courageous decision be right now to go work out if I need to, or the courageous decision to not eat this shitty dessert when I say that I want to get in better shape? All these things, it comes down to single decisions, single points of success or failure. And if you can choose to look at it like that, is this thing going to help me or not? It may not. And if that's the case, you don't have to beat yourself up about it. You don't have to go into this negative tirade, this spiral where it's like, I never do that. And all of a sudden now, that's why I'm a piece of shit, blah, blah, blah. That's not helping you, right? I mean, you can beat yourself up for a second, get back on the horse, stay in the lane, keep moving forward, keep walking. That's the only way that you can get there. But it's very easy for us to find, like you said, these artificial distractions, these pacifications. And that's the way they're designed. That your smartphone is designed to keep you on there. The social media networks are designed to keep you on there. Why? Because they want to sell you something. They want to use advertising. They want to get you into this experience. The same thing with Netflix. Like you said, you're done with this episode. What else happens? Oh, you're ready for the next one? All of a sudden, boom, it's on there. And you're like, well, I'm already here. Well, I might as well. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? And now, like you said, and then what else happens? We understand physiology. That light doesn't help us. As a mammal, I see those lights. It tells me I need to be awake. It takes me half an hour for my melatonin levels to begin to creep in. But if I'm dead tired, and if I haven't had any time in my life that day to not have any inputs, to not take a breath, to not meditate, to not have peace, my head hits the pillow and all of a sudden, and that circus is going on. And all of a sudden you're just kind of stuck there. So now you're wasting time because you're not asleep. We have to just be very honest about where we are. We have to meet ourselves where we are. We always talk about meeting our clients where they are. Meet yourself where you are. Like, if you want to be this thing, that's fine. What's that person doing that you're not? What's one thing that you can do right now? It doesn't have to be this huge mountain, right? When we're climbing, just take this next step. In the military, Stop making it bigger than what it fucking is. Get to lunch, get through this iteration, whatever it is, finish these push-ups, finish Murph, finish the K, get done with whatever you're doing and now move on to the next thing. Again, complete the task. We don't have to sit there and say, oh, well, when I was in mountain warfare school, if I looked at the top of that mountain, dude, I'm never going to get there. But if I put that carabiner on, take that rest step, breathe, boom, step, breathe, I'll get there. It's just a matter of time at that point.
Yep. I love that, man. Tell me what you're working on this upcoming year. What's 2022 look like for you? What do you got coming?
More speaking events for 2022. ACTA NON-VERBA, my podcast, is getting its third year, so it's getting some momentum. I'm going to have you on really soon. I got you coming on tomorrow, so that's going to be amazing. Doing some live events this year, hopefully. Also working on more speaking live as well, and put it into a place where I'm actually talking to the right audiences to get what I need. And then, like we were talking about before, the high level coaching where I'm coaching the people individually. There's a few of them that actually inquired about me coming out to them, and they're willing to really invest that time and invest in themselves to get to that next place. And then working on my second book, ACTA NON-VERBA, turning adversity into victory through deeds, not words. If anybody hears anything right now, it's like, go out and do it. Go out and try. Go out and fall down. Go out and be willing to look like an idiot for a second, like you said, because that second passes. But the progress that we make in the process of getting there, man, nobody can take that away from you once you're actually there.
Yeah, man. I love it. It builds confidence. And like we were talking about before, that confidence seeps into everything.
It does. And it bleeds over into everybody around us, right?
Yeah. Because courage is lacking right now. And so if you can behave courageously, you can inspire those around you.
And that means we make courageous decisions all the time.
Yep.
What's the courageous decision here? Yeah.
I love it. Marcus, thank you so much for hopping on. Where can people find you at? If they need you to come speak at their event, or they need you to come coach them or come to their company and chop things up with them.
Yeah, do workshops and all that. They can go to marcusaureliusanderson.com. If you're on the interwebs, you can go to the website. If you're a social media guy, you can find me at LinkedIn, Instagram. I have a small presence on Twitter and Facebook too, but it seems like most of my business seems to be coming from LinkedIn and Instagram. LinkedIn's changed a little bit over the years, but in the end, that's kind of where I built most of my platform. But that's where I do it. And then if you enjoy what we're talking about, ACTA NON-VERBA is the podcast, and I'll be having Mr. Smith on soon, and that's going to be out. And we're going to be bringing this kind of fire and more, because it's always incredible to catch up with Jeff, but then to be able to really delve into this kind of stuff, this is where you actually see the rubber meet the road. And it's not that difficult. It's simple, but it doesn't mean that it's easy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, I appreciate your time as always.
Thank you, brother.
Let me know if I can do anything for you, or if you're ever in Houston. Obviously, I would love to see you. We'll post all your information to the show notes. So guys, if you want to catch up with him, it'll all be in the show notes. And thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, brother.
All right. Appreciate it.
See you.
Thank you guys for another episode of the Tactical Empire. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you for listening to the show. Make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share with a friend. We'll see you on the next episode of the Tactical Empire.